Appreciate your time.
Speaking to the microphone there.
Yes, sir. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your invitation and your time today for me to speak about such an important subject as the awareness and prevention of veteran and active duty suicides. So I will try to make this brief. And essentially, I have a father who is a veteran of the Vietnam War. And okay, except for a little bit of a drinking issue, which was an issue. However, I never saw him upset. I never saw him abusive or anything of that nature when he was on alcohol until my parents divorced, and he was seeking causes the exact symptoms that some of them come in with. And some of them get multiple prescriptions and a cocktail of these drugs. And not all of them are committing suicide. Some of them actually die in their sleep with congestive heart failure, because that's another side effect, especially on the cocktails of these drugs. So I just want to make this very aware. I understand this is really, and I'm sure Capitol Hill is catching on. I do know of a doctor that I'm bringing to town in May, Dr. Linda Legeman, of a psychologist, who is now working with CCHR, Citizens Commission on Human Rights, to make this aware on Capitol Hill and make this agenda something that will change. So I'm just in Georgia. I'm mostly going for awareness, but if there's anything else that you elected officials can do, I would greatly appreciate that.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions? Representative Williams.
Thank you very much, sir. I've had the opportunity over the last several years to have been in close contact with the problem of suicide in the military areas.
Okay.
And I have not heard a lot said about the psychiatrists. You know, having served in Vietnam myself, I have a lot of friends who are Korea. And please, as you look into the fact that a great deal of, as a matter of fact, the majority of the suicides don't seek help because they don't want to ruin a career. And no matter what folk tell you, when you report it, that's you. Especially if you're an officer or high-ranking NCO. That's the biggest problem with how they don't look for help. They try to handle it. And it has very little with treatment. They don't get treatment because they won't seek it. Army is trying to change that culture where you don't have that stigma of having said, I have a problem. Army is working hard on that. But until that military person is willing to walk forward and seek some help, there's going to be a whole lot of changes.
Yes, sir. I understand that.
Thank you, Representative Williams. I will say that we are looking into that University of Georgia. Remember that dean from the University of Georgia? I'm looking to get that started up, and hopefully can work that out. But I hope you remember his testimony when we're talking about that issue. Okay, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it.
Do you mind if I just make one last
Yes,
point?
sir, of course.
Yeah. There is a retired Lieutenant Colonel, Bart Billings, who was in the service, and he is a psychologist, who also reports in this magazine that just of the over-prescription and the easily prescribed on the drugs. Okay. So it definitely, that is an issue, and definitely many of the suicides, I'm not going to say more, the vast majority, no, but too many suicides are from these drugs.
Okay, thanks very much,
I
sir.
appreciate your time. Thanks.
Yes, sir. Okay, I have a word from the Conservancy Group.
Chairman Belton, thank you for the invitation. Committee members, we really appreciate the work that you're doing to secure the military bases here in the state of Georgia. They're an incredibly important part of not just our economy, but certainly the preparedness that our nation must always be in a state of. Today, I'm here to talk to you on behalf of a number of conservation organizations who've worked together for a number of years to come up with a way to dedicate funding for land and water conservation in the state of Georgia. And there's a very specific military component here. Before I go further, I just want to point out that there are a couple of reference materials in your packet, and I encourage you to read up on both of those. Right now, or just last session, House Bill 332 was introduced and passed through Natural Resources, and its companion resolution, House Bill 238, was heard in the Ways and Means Sales Tax Committee just yesterday morning. What the Georgia Outdoor Stewardship Act would do is dedicate a portion of the existing, not new, but existing sales tax that is collected on outdoor recreation equipment and be used for three primary purposes. Those three primary purposes are stewardship and habitat management for existing state and public lands, state lands, not federal lands. Number two, there's a dollar there that would match local dollars for expanding green space and parks. And then the third bucket is around having dollars available for state conservation priorities. In a meeting with the governor's office about 4 or 5 months ago, or actually it was last year, the governor's office really recommended that we make sure that Army compatible use buffers were part of the language that was written in. As you know, the federal government provides dollars to military bases to buffer around their perimeters so we don't have the encroachment of homes or businesses or other things that might stand in the way of live fire practice. You know, of course, the Townsend Bombing Range is the only live bombing range on the East Coast. There's a lot of live action fire and training that goes on at Benning and the other forts around the state. And so when the state has dollars to invest in those strategic buffer opportunities, they tend to move a little more quickly. And we feel that it does provide this committee and this state not with a silver bullet for ensuring that the economic engines that are our military bases are secure here in the state, but this is, yet again, one more tool that you would have at your disposal. So we have been working hard with leadership on both sides of the House and Senate. We've worked directly with the governor's office, who has indicated that he'd be delighted to sign this bill if it comes to his desk. And I encourage all of you to study up and ultimately support the House bill and the resolution. There's so much more to this. Outdoor recreation is a huge engine, economic engine in our state, about $27 billion a year. But I want to focus my comments on the benefits that it could bring to the work, the fine work that this committee's been doing, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Glanton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You got me?
Yep.
Test. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your presentation. It stipulates here that it would be no new funding nor additional funding, but it would come from the existing taxes that are already there. So, if the stewardship gains, who loses?
So, you know, that's a great question. That's a question that we know is going to be asked. If we look back over the last 10 to 15 years, the state has oftentimes issued bonds specifically for some of the mechanisms that we talk about in this bill. And looking back over that history, that number ranges between $10 and $20 million, averaging out to between about $15 million. So we've closed a $15 million out of the $40 million gap there. Additionally, when we look at the sales tax revenues and the increases that have occurred in the recent years, certainly since the economic recession, there's a great opportunity to create this mechanism without causing you all to have to work through serious or painful cuts to other programs. The one thing that we have heard loud and clear from folks like Jack Hill and others is that we need to provide a pressure relief valve so that in the event that we experience, God forbid, another 2007, 2008, and 2009, that these dollars can be freed and moved back into the general fund so that those budgets can be balanced.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
And thank you for that answer. Also, would this, and have you had an opportunity to collaborate with the Department of Natural Resources? How does this fit into the Department of Natural Resources? And have you approached them in regards to adding something like this to their budget? What is their flavor?
So we have worked very closely with the Department of Natural Resources, and the effort here to dedicate this money, because of the bond issuances and the fact that it can't be counted on year over year. Priorities rise and fall. But with a dedicated fund such as the one that we've talked about, a perfect example for this committee is the state has the ability to plan for the future. We know what the Department of Defense is willing to invest in the Army Compatible Use Buffer Program each and every year. But with the ability to know a year or two in advance, rather than through the appropriations process, that there's a dollar there from the state, we're able to match those federal funds and get a great deal more done around that Army Compatible Use Buffer Program, or acquisition or expansion of parks, or priority conservation for new state lands for public access, so on and so forth. But yes, we've worked very closely with the Department of Natural Resources.
One last follow-up, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
And so how does that fit into, I'm thinking procedural now. Usually we're not able to earmark
It's-
programs and projects out of the general fund. How does that work?
So, Representative, this is a request, so there's a House bill, which is the enabling legislation that I discussed, but there's a House resolution as well that was just heard in the Sales Tax Committee of Ways and Means. And what would happen is you all would be choosing whether or not to send this to a ballot referendum to amend the Constitution. I have included a poll that was conducted in mid-December by the McLaughlin Group, a commonly used pollster here in the state of Georgia and across the nation, that demonstrates that Georgians, on order of an 8 out of 10, so 80% of Georgians would be very interested, if given the opportunity, to vote yes on this bill. That's 69% of Republican primary voters and a higher percentage of Democratic voters. We oversampled for the Republicans, just understanding the nature of our state and who's here in this chamber.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr.
My
Chairman.
pleasure.
Representative Carson?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for that. What is the bill number?
I want to check so I don't tell you the wrong. I believe it's House Bill 332, but let
That's
me
right.
confirm that for you.
332 and the companion.
Yeah, House Bill's
238.
332. House Resolution 238 was heard yesterday and for the first time in the Sales Tax Subcommittee of Ways and Means.
Do you have a fiscal note on
Yes, we do. We've
332?
actually had a couple of different fiscal notes. We've adjusted the fiscal note to match the goal, which was roughly $40 million. Initially, the fiscal note came back and it was excessive. It was too much. And then it has been adjusted so that the dollars line up with what our intentions were.
The 75% of the existing sales tax, is that on the local piece as well?
No, it's only on the state sales tax piece.
Why would it not be on the local as well?
I think that we begin to lose many of our county governments and the ACCG and others who are currently supportive of this bill.
It might have constitutionally dedicated portions of 1 cent sales tax. Is there a sunset? In other words, are you thinking in perpetuity, or is this for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years?
So there is no current sunset set written in, but the House resolution language states up to 75%, not prescriptive 75%. So that, in effect, is a sunset because this body can choose how that fluctuates. The resolution language or the ballot language states clearly up to, which does provide the legislative body the flexibility
Well, that's up
to go
a
to zero.
Well, that's up to a percentage. It's not up to $1.
Correct.
So there's no cap per se. Okay.
There is a cap written into the
It's not like you go to $50 million and that's it. You stop doing the allocation, correct?
every 5 years there's a look at those sales tax. So as they rise, there is the opportunity or possibility that the contribution to this fund would rise. But it's certainly something that we're willing to look at.
Are there other states doing something very similar? And
There are a number of states. In fact, most of the states that surround the state of Georgia, southeastern states, are doing something similar. We looked at South Carolina, Alabama, the state of Florida, Arkansas, Missouri, Virginia, some states in the north, which I won't reference, have done this. And we've really tried to take the lessons learned from many of those states to craft a Georgia state solution that really works with sort of the values of our state.
Okay, thank you for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Kevin Burchett. And Kevin, you have to give them your title, because I don't know it off the top of my head.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's Kevin Brucian. It's the
Sorry.
South Atlantic Regional Liaison for the Defense State Liaison Office. That's a mouthful, granted. Thank you, sir, and committee members for inviting me on behalf of the Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness. I have been asked to come down and just give you a quick rundown on the 2018 DoD key quality of life issues for military personnel. If you take a look real quick at the packet that I gave you, the key on this is to look at the blue highlighted items, because those are the items that Georgia still is currently working on, or they have not done those issues yet, completed them. Anything in green, if you look at it, Georgia has already accomplished. The green, I put the actual bill number when it was passed, so it shows when it was due. So really, out of the 10 issues, Georgia has completed, I would basically say 5.5. I will tell you quickly that the first issue, which is policy to support identification and reporting of child abuse and neglect, there is currently a House Bill 242 that is in committee that was introduced by Representative Brian Prince last year. And I will tell you that bill does meet the intent of that issue, just to let you know that. And again, as we talked this morning, sir, I mean, the big thing on that is there's just been often a disconnect between the military installations and the outside the gate agencies on reporting child abuse and neglect from one agency to the installation, or even from the installation back. So that's all that would do, is put that connection there. Facilitate service members receiving academic credit for military training. There is one typo on that. I had put down Senate Bill 819 that passed in 2016, and that was Senate Bill 18 by Senator Harbison. And but what it did is it was limited to the technical colleges, that they will find a way to give military credit for their academic training. But at this point, nothing for the four-year universities. Next, licensing compacts for military spouses and transitioning service members. A lot of occupations have now started to establish compacts, and we have been working with the National Interstate Compact Commission to include military spouses and transitioning service members on some of these. There's 4 currently that we're looking at: physical therapy compact, enhanced nurses licensure compact, the psychology compact, and then replica, which is basically the EMS compact, which Georgia has already joined 2 of those 4. They've joined the enhanced nurses licensure compact and the EMS compact in 2017. So that would leave the physical therapy compact and the psychology compact as the only 2 left. And that will probably be, for DOD anyhow, an ongoing issue as more compacts, as our office in DSLO works with different occupations and the National Interstate Compact Commission to develop compacts that will be transitioning service member or military spouse friendly. Increased protection under state service civil relief, SCRA. Basically, it would be a state SCRA. We still are finding members as they deploy on short notice or actually get a change of station, that they're still getting tapped with late fees for everything from gym memberships to cell phones to TVs to different things. So all it would be almost like a state SCRA versus just the federal SCRA. In 2016, House Bill 825 was introduced, and it actually passed the House, passed the Senate with amendments, and before it could go over and get concurred on, they signed, he died. So nothing happened in 2017 on it. So, but other than that, sir, the others, as you see, are in green, or issues that Georgia has already tackled, are already in reference to the pro bono program. Legal representation, I mean, the program was reviewed, and Georgia's was like one of the best in the nation. So,
One of the best in the nation. Say it again, please.
the pro bono,
Okay.
yes, sir.
Yeah. Representative Prince, can you talk to us about that bill that you had?
Yes, House Bill 242. Basically, as Bruce stated, what it does is just closes a loop that's commanders, head DOD officials on posts where they don't see. If a child abuse case is, and I just use Fort Gordon as an example, if there's an active, and it only pertains to active duty soldiers. If an active duty soldier who lives off base is alleged to abuse their children, the local agency, family advocacy agency, they'll come in, they'll get that case. But what doesn't happen usually is that is not reported to the soldier's commanding officer or anything like that. So, or the family advocacy center on that base. And so what this would do is just say, let the family advocacy center know that, hey, there is a case, possible case against this person, and then that command will at least know. Now, again, this is just a heads up type of thing.
Right.
Just letting them know that that's what's
But
going
where
on.
is the bill right now, or is it?
The bill is in juvenile justice with Chairman Ballinger.
Okay.
And we're trying to get it heard.
If you'll
this year.
please remind me of that. That sounds
Sure,
like something we
no
need
worries.
to work on. For sure.
And again, it's an extra step, and the Child Advocacy Centers have all agreed that that's just another step they will have to take, but it's worth the step. And it's just notifying the Family Advocacy Center on that base, or which that soldier is assigned, that there is a possible child abuse case.
Okay, thank you, sir.
And-
Representative Williams, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Burris, for being here. And thank you, Representative Prince. It's an interesting, because what I've found in my experience, child domestic abuse is many times hand in hand with suicide. And all the indicators is the real trouble is ahead of us, because we have in the 3rd Infantry Division, that's 5 deployments.
Right.
That's a lot of deployment.
Yes, sir.
A lot of the PCTS has not shown up yet. And there are 2 areas of abuse. Most likely person to get reported is a young wife who's married to an E5 or below. They'll get mad and call the cops. Career folk don't, because the career's on the line. An E6 and above's wife who's got over 10 years, very unlikely to call authorities.
Right.
Because her husband, she knows husband or wife's career is over or just really affected, and they don't. So once again, you got the inward strife instead of talking to someone. And with hundreds of thousands of people we have brought home from the Middle East,
Yes, sir.
military towns like mine, it's big, and it will only get bigger. It's,
Yes, sir.
it's something, it's really going to blow up. We really have got to deal with it.
Yes, sir. And one of the purposes behind this as well is if the installation does not know, and you're 100% right there, sir, on that. I mean, we have to basically go by, whether it's reported by a school teacher, by a neighbor, hopefully if the parents are, in that case, would be called. But the other thing that it does, besides just make that connection, I mean, the military treatment facility, as you well know, they have capabilities that they can bring to bear to help both the family or the child abuse victim, as well as behavioral science type, things. So that's the one thing too that they're looking at is a helping piece of this. I mean, we've heard often, it's like, well, again, if you do that, the commander's going to take action. But when you go and look at the DOD FAP regulations, I mean, a commander cannot, unless it's actually substantiated, proven case, he can't take action. So, I mean, the key thing, I know, but the key thing for us is to make sure that the report comes in so that, both the victim and the accuser both possibly could get the help that they may need. Yes, sir.
Representative Corbett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Prince, question on your bill. The information, will it flow both ways? If the situation that happened in Texas, where the military didn't report it to the civilian authorities, will it take care of that as well?
Yeah, and that's, say again?
There,
Go ahead.
I was going to say there is actually a federal requirement that I mean, that just never happened in Texas. That was a big mess up, that the commander on the installation or, the family advocacy program did not notify the outside agency, which, I mean, there is directions, guidance that they do notify, and that didn't happen.
One more comment, and then we'll move on here. Representative Clinton?
Well, I don't.
Okay. Representative Carson, do you have something? Sorry. Okay. If you would, can you talk to Paul Higby's our attorney? Can you mind talking about I'm very interested in the compacts, because we looked at the physical therapy. We thought we had got that ironed out, but evidently there's a compact situation. Is that correct, Paul? Okay, if you don't mind, iron that out to make sure we have that as covered as well. Any other questions? Okay, thank you really appreciate you coming down. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Scott Ross wanted to speak briefly from the United Way. Is he here today? No, he's not. Okay. I'll go very, very briefly to the governor's recommended budget highlights. Patrick Love, our assistant, put this together. I think it's great because I didn't have this before. We are putting a lot of money into the military, one way or the other. The big ticket items of $4.5 million in the Cyber Innovation Training Center, $1 million for service cancelable loans, $750,000 for the Georgia National Guard Service Cancelable Loans Project, $23 million for the Youth Challenge Academies, $5.5 million for state contributions, and so we are putting a lot of money into this. $40.8 million for Veterans Affairs, Representative Hitchens, and I just wanted y'all to be aware of all this money is coming in. And number 6, the item there, Georgia Tech awarded a $910 million grant for aviation and missile research. That sounds pretty cool. Yes, Georgia Tech Research Institute. That's almost $1 billion in missile technology. So that's a huge win as well. Any questions about that? Any comments about those numbers? Representative Carson?
Not a question as much as a comment. I don't know if representatives from Georgia Tech are here, but I believe that $900 million is a contract, but it's over a number of years, maybe 9 or 10 years.
That's right.
So that's good, steady work for, I would say, for depending on federal budget environment, but that is fantastic engineering work right here in our home state, right here in our capital. So kudos to Georgia Tech.
Representative Williams?
Really great, and I'm glad to see more and more attention being paid. But missing still is a designated budget item for a full-time executive director and staff who does nothing but work on military affairs.
Well, that's we're gonna talk about that.
All right,
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Any other questions or comments? Okay, House resolutions. I know we have this coming up. Just wanted to y'all be aware of them. The first one is Marine Corps Albany. Representative Elam, you want to talk about that real quickly?
Well, we're just super excited to have General Crenshaw, and he's the commander of the Logistics Command, and Colonel Carroll, he's the commanding officer of the Marine base there. They're supposed to be bringing their sergeant majors. I think it's phenomenal. This is and I've asked the general if I can say this or not, but I'm going to tell you all. He may not let me say this before the whole house, but this is the first time in history that our 2 senior officers and our 2 senior enlisted, both sergeant majors, are all African American.
Wow.
And, yep, for the Marine base, so it's really awesome. And the female sergeant major, she is the first female sergeant major ever for the Logistics Command, and she's retiring in June.
Wow.
So I hope we get to say something special about her.
Of course, yeah.
So I really hope you all will make it, come, make them welcome. The general's just awesome. He's a fine, great. Everything on the base, he invites me to. I know him personally. I know the colonel personally. They're just wonderful people.
Thank you.
It's next Tuesday.
The 6th.
It's
6th
gonna
of
be
February.
At 10 o'clock. They're going to arrive here probably about 9:40. I'm going to take them to the general's outer office. We're going to go in and meet the governor at the governor at 10 o'clock. As soon as we meet with the governor and he takes a picture, then we're bringing him to the House. And, of course, they're going to address the House in an invite resolution, and then we'll take them to the Senate.
Very good. Thank you. And Fort Benning's will be the next day, 7th February. I don't see anybody from Fort Benning here. And then Kings Bay is coming the 20th of February. Representative Corbett, you want to talk about that a little bit?
No, just again, we're excited to have them come and to recognize King Bay and for the job that they do. I know everybody that went on the tour of the submarine had a really eye-opening experience. That's a great experience for nobody. If you haven't had the chance to do that, if you get the opportunity to take it, it was quite a good experience and a lot learning experience for us. So look forward to having them here to recognize them, and pretty much like Daryl's doing, we'll start out with a picture with the governor and then bring them to the House. William Ligon's going to have them in the Senate, and then they'll meet with the Secretary of State and then some other people that day. But anyway, look forward to having them here.
All right, thank you. And then we need a date for the Dobbins Air Reserve Base as well. I'm hoping we're working on that. Representative Carson?
Yes, so I've spoke to Captain Meredith Kirchhoff. They're very excited about coming down. I think it'll be Brigadier General Stephen Parker and Marty Hughes, Colonel Hughes. They were both at as part of our visit back in, what was it, October of 16. That's right. So there might be a few others as well. We might want to do something together with the Guard. I know we just had a Georgia Guard Day, but maybe we want to do something on a joint level.
Okay, if you would just start working on that, and please make sure you get those resolutions in, because it's taken the resolution, the legislative council.
They have the adjournment schedule. It will probably be early March, but
Okay, no hurry, just want to make sure that happens. The next item is base visits. I want to just feel y'all out about that. Representative Williams?
Ask you, there's one other that will probably be an invite, resolution HB 245, the teacher licensure bill. I ran it back through no changes, strictly to get it named the Tracy Rainey bill, and named for the wife of Major General Rainey, who commanded the 3rd when we passed it, and they're committed to come if we're able to arrange it where we can name that bill for her. And as you all know, as we went to Washington, there was not one place that we went in the Pentagon that bill didn't come up. They talked about that licensure bill everywhere we went. So I really want to see them come down and be on it.
Okay, that sounds like a great idea. And that licensure bill really was a very, very important first step. I salute you, Representative Williams, for doing that. Representative Elam?
Back to our topic, I think you mentioned about visits.
Yes.
Is that what we're talking about now?
Yes, we're
Okay.
right now. Yeah.
As most of our bases, and some even more so, we turn over every 3 years, some even every 2 years with our commanding officers. So I think doing it once every 3 years is very good, because I think it gives us a chance to bring that new commanding general or that new commanding officer up here, and I think it gives us a chance to go down to their base and show them that we, as a state legislature, are very concerned. So I think to rotate it on a 3-year basis, once in each 2-year legislative cycle would make sense to me.
That's what I hope that we could just briefly. I'm hoping what we'll do is visit 4 bases each year. I think the way it ought to go, and this is open for discussion, is I think the Benning and Albany together sounded like a good idea to me. That way, because it's on that side, have a separate visit to Gordon and a separate visit to Dobbins. And that'd be 1 year, 2018, I'm hoping. And then 2019, I'm hoping to have 1 visit to Stewart. In each, we're going to from now on, we're going to do 1 base, 1 day. We're going to make sure we spend 1 day at Stewart, 1 day at Kings Bay, and then another day at Robbins and another day at Moody. But put the Stewart, Kings Bay, and the Robbins and Moody into a 2-day period as we did before. So, Representative Williams.
I wanted to thank you, Representative Elam, but you and Representative Kitchens, being Marines, we understand that it takes you all longer to learn your jobs, but usually our general commands change every 2 years in the Army. We don't do 3. We do 2, because y'all need that first year to learn how to get to the grocery store.
Thank you, Representative Williams. Appreciate that wise comments. So, do you all agree? Obviously, it's the speaker's pleasure, but this is what I think we should do. Any dissenting votes on this? Trying to set it out like this? About the actually going visiting the different bases. I'm sorry, Representative Prince.
The Gordon, I see you had that for 2018, so that'll be I'm thinking it's sometime later this year. Let's talk about that, because we have a lot going on down there, in particular the cyber training centers that are being built. That I really want, and they just started construction on the second piece of. I'm not sure this year, at least not early this year. If maybe later in the year.
Okay.
But we can talk about. I like
Sure.
to just talk about that offline, because I like when you come there, I would like for you guys to be able to see that.
Exactly.
See the progress. If you come down now, you'll see the first part is, and and you'd be amazed how fast they're putting this thing together.
Okay.
But the second part, I mean, I want you guys
Sure.
to be able to go
No,
and
that's a good
see
point.
the
Yeah.
actual range.
Exactly.
When it you know.
Okay.
online.
Well, I just put this out. We could
Yeah,
change it to
okay.
19. Yes, sir. Thank you. Representative Carson?
I just wanted to ask Mr. Chairman if we could work around, I know this is technical, it's a detail to work around, but in regard to the Dobbins visit, we just need to work around the hurricane season. They are extremely busy preparing in August, as well as September and October. Slade, is that correct? If we could do, frankly, given that, and I hate to bring this word up, but we all know it's an election year, so I don't see something happening in August when it's dreadfully hot, but possibly after the election, maybe in November,
Okay.
right after the, after hurricane season, and no comparison between hurricane season, but there's election season there, right there as well. So,
election's worse.
yeah, election could be worse now. It could be.
Okay. We can talk online, but yes, sir. We'll make sure that happens.
And I'll make sure I'll have all the military commanders when they come by to make sure they say that when you're on a military base, you cannot use your phone when you're driving on that military base, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Thank you. And I think we should do another Washington trip. I think that was very, very helpful. I don't know about y'all, but Afghanistan, okay. And I would think 2019 would be when we. I think 2018 would be a little bit hard to do. I think 2019 would be a non-election year. Do y'all agree with that? Every 2 years, okay. All right. I want you to know that we are working on, Representative Williams, Georgia Defense Initiative Council. Representative Chairman Earhart is working on that right now to possibly get some funding for that. So if you want to talk to Chairman Earhart, he's doing some really good work for us on that. He would love to hear from you. You would, again, University of System Georgia and Technical College System of Georgia has won some other awards for excellence in military-friendly. And we have a couple of members here. Do we have anybody from the Technical College? No? Okay. I have this piece of paper somewhere. I've got all of these pieces of paper. Thank you. So it looks like this. This year, number 3 in the nation in military-friendly schools in the nation was Armstrong State. Number 9 was Georgia State. Number 53 was University of Georgia. Number 61 was Kennesaw State. Number 70, College of Coastal Georgia. Augusta University, number 93. Georgia Southern, 112. And University of North Georgia, 129. So that's 8 in the top 130 or so. And technical systems, even better. Savannah Tech, number 1 for the second time in your year. Number 1 in the whole nation. Gwinnett Tech, number 4. Wiregrass, number 14, and Central Georgia Tech, number 23. So they're doing a really good job. And this is really important, not just because we have military-friendly schools, but because military folks who get a degree, who can move on and have a job, are much less likely to have suicides. And it's a big deal. So I really applaud these people. We'll bring it back. What's that? It is good brag stuff. I'm going to briefly let y'all talk about anything that you think we should be doing right now that we're not doing on the road ahead. Is there any, besides the bills we're passing, is it something that we should be moving towards that we're not doing right now as a committee? Representative Williams?
If you don't mind now. I don't know if we can even do it, if it'll work out, but I really would like to, in our next series of visits, talk to more enlisted people, because we hear the prepared statements. We don't hear the real story. The real story is told by sergeant and below, because the person that's hurting for housing is an E4 who's got a wife and lives in a mobile home outside of military base. Field grade officers don't have housing problems and the associated things. We got to talk to the people where the rubber meets the ground and where the weeds are. And you don't hear that when the command gets to pick who you talk to. You hear the prepared statement that looks good at 6 o'clock, but it ain't the real world.
Well, that's a very good point. I think from now on, when we do go to these visits, let's try to make some time for some talk to some real, get the folks like that.
denied the right to have a captain testify.
Is that right?
You ain't let a captain. They wouldn't even let a captain talk. They X'd it.
Representative Elam?
Well, I just say the obvious, that commanding officer, that commanding general dictates, and when we're going down and we want to be at his beck and call, he's gonna get to choose. So, I think if we, I tell you what, I really believe that if we wanted to, and little General Crenshaw, of course, General Crenshaw's leaving in June now, and I've got to start over again, but it'll be nice. But if I talk to General Crenshaw and say, General, we really, really, want to talk to Sergeant, he'd do that. But he's in charge.
I understand, but and my thing is, in the United States of America, this is a civilian government. They serve at their pleasure. We serve their budgets, everything. And unfortunately, General Crenshaw is no different from any other general. He can't say anything until the superiors in the Pentagon read the statements. He can't tell you that. But I'm telling you right now that I'm willing to go offline, not on post, but in the community, and talk to military people. But you're not doing any good when a colonel tells you how life is. And the people, and they're a whole lot more elephants, E5 and below, than they are elephants, 06 and above. And I like to talk to the elephants, because they the ones know what's really going on. They ain't got no policy, but all the problems in the military, 70% of them are on them, and the folk do what we did when suicide hit. The general officers and the commanders said, oh, we didn't know. Let's get a big committee and study this. And folk been trying to do it for years.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, we're going to move on. Go ahead, Representative Carson. What's
Very quick. Transportation is near and dear to my heart, and that's going to be the subject of a lot of discussion in D.C. I would not recommend a council resolution or anything like that. But I do think one or several of us from this committee should probably get together with GDOT and find out what are we doing in regard to ingress, egress around our military bases to improve that, and how do we competitively position ourselves versus Florida, North Carolina, California, so forth. And I'll leave it with that.
Who'd like to lead that charge? That's a good charge. Okay, you got it.
Come on now, raise your hand.
You got all those problems. We ain't got those problems.
Well, that's a very good point.
Two people to join me.
Okay, who wants to join Representative Carson doing that?
I'm not sure I'm really understanding that.
So the issue is basically how much and what are we doing to improve our transportation infrastructure in, not on the base, but to and out of the base. In other words, are we maintaining safety equipment, resurfacing roads, so forth, so on. You take a look at Albany. Okay, so how old are those railroad tracks to ship those armored personnel carriers from the port in Jacksonville to Albany? What's our strategic competitive advantage for Georgia in regard to our transportation infrastructure? What I keep hearing all the time in regard to how we're comparing to other states, education, licensure and housing for the family, and transportation.
That's right.
And Chairman, I would, in the absence of anybody else, and unless there's somebody more qualified, I would love to lead the charge on the transportation
I'll let
side.
you charge. We'll get two more people on offline for you. That sounds good. That's a good idea. We're going to go talk to some folks who have some bills come and talk to us about that. We'll start with the Representative Spencer, since he asked before. So if you'll kind of briefly tell us about your bill, and sure appreciate you coming.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I really value the work of this group. I think it's an absolute necessity that the speaker has put forward. So, as you know, Kings Bay Naval Base is in my district. I am a military brat. I was born on Offutt Air Force Base, and my dad was stationed at Moody Air Force Base when I was about 2 or 3. And I grew up in South Georgia, and so I have an affinity for the military. My uncle served in the military, and so did my grandfather in World War II. And what I bring before you today is something that got brought to my attention probably about 2 or 3 years ago, and Representative Corbett's he and I both represent Charlton County, but the hospital in Charlton and Folkestone is actually in his district. And one of the things I got sort of onto is I had local veterans there in Folkestone ask me about the possibility, could we turn that hospital into a potential nursing home for veterans, our veterans home. And so I started thinking about that, and I said, well, that's kind of a heavy lift, but it's something to kind of chew on and think about. But then I started thinking about, what about these other hospitals that have closed in Georgia, especially in the rural parts of the state? As you know, with the VA system, you know, if our folks down in our neck of the woods have to go to a VA hospital, it's either Dublin or where I'm at, Gainesville, Florida. And so their geography is a major issue. If one of them want to spend time in a nursing home or in a veterans home, obviously we have 2 here in Georgia, but Georgia's military veteran population is growing. And I think if we could sort of think outside the box on this, what could we do with these hospitals that are sort of sitting there in these small communities that are no longer bringing value that they once did? What could we do to convert these stranded assets to veterans homes? That was the idea that I sort of wanted to ask the question. So I just came from a meeting with Commissioner Roby. I sort of piggybacked on a meeting with Representative Rick Williams. They are trying to do something with the old Millersville Hospital there. And so what the questions they are asking are the similar questions I am asking. And so it was an informative meeting. I'm still doing some groundwork on this resolution to come before the Military Affairs Committee there, so I could bring some of that background information there. But I learned a few things there. The VA has a configuration team. They look at this stuff all the time, so I'm aware of that. I've got some names and numbers I need to call and sort of kind of get an idea of what that process looks like. How do we get those folks to come down and visit these hospitals? Will these hospitals meet the criteria? I don't know. Those are the questions that we need to ask. And so these are things that I want to try to entertain with this study committee and sort of kind of dig in deep. This is something I see as a long-term project. This is not something that could happen overnight, because we've got to work with our Fed counterparts there. It may be a state and local partnership on an issue like this. So that's really the impetus for the resolution. And if you have questions, I'll try to answer them. But at this point, I'm still exploring this idea, and I think a study committee would be helpful in kind of getting nailed down some of these other questions.
Okay, I have to go to another committee meeting. So Representative Williams, do you mind chairing the committee at this point? I appreciate your time. And we have Representative Scott also wants to talk about her bill. Thanks.
When you come back, there are a few members of this committee I would have fired. It'll be somewhat slimmer than it has been. My question I would ask, and I'm going to recognize there's another flashing, but you know, when we start talking about CON, the heavens fall in Georgia. And if you think the heavens fall over hospitals, try nursing homes, it's just as brutal. 70,000 people live in Liberty County. We couldn't qualify for another nursing home. We had to put it in Long County, my hospital, because of CON. So that's something to consider, because the folk who have will fight hard to make sure there's no competition. So that's one thing. And who's number 15? You got the floor. Al Williams. Well, I'll take another 3 minutes. I'll take another little bit. All right, thank you. I'll close yours off. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you so much, Representative Spencer. I think it's a good idea. We certainly look forward to getting more information on it.
Oh, and I've given you in your packet from the, I think it's the Armed Services Nursing Home Association. It's a couple years, maybe 3 years old, but they kind of do a survey of the status of the veterans homes in the United States. So just kind of look through that. That's sort of the basis I'm working off of there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Representative Scott, will you come forth? You've been very patient, and both of us were supposed to be at another meeting. And so I said I'd hold out as long as you held out. Go right ahead.
Good afternoon. Be very brief. I have House Bill 719, and it is to it would require the housing authorities to develop and implement policies granting housing preference to veterans who are homeless. This is trying to help us take control of our homeless veterans. You know, we have a lot of homeless veterans here in the state of Georgia, and feel like if we could have the housing authorities to provide veterans preference, just like we have with the job situation, do the same thing with our homeless veterans. So that is what the bill basically is about.
Let me ask you a question, and I think some of the members of the committee might be able to help me with this. But I know that in Hinesville, our housing authority comes under HUD, federal. And so would this require some federal action? Because most of the housing authorities, most of their money comes to housing and urban development. I don't know. I'm asking anybody that can help with that. I'm not really certain. I don't know.
Well, that's something that I will look into.
Please
but
look
I think
into it.
that
I'm not certain.
they may already have, they have already set a policy, but I'll make sure and get you the information.
Please.
Yeah.
I think it's great if we can help it. Unfortunately, if you take a poll, half the people under the bridges and on the streets are Vietnam veterans. You know, so certainly needed. Certainly needed.
Okay.
All right. Now, my young consigliere, is there anything else we need to cover? Because I don't think we have to stay here until the chairman gets back. Not that you're aware of. I've been told by my advisor that he's not aware of any pressing business. So unless folk have other things to do, let's just stay here and talk for another hour or so. Thank you all. Thank everybody for participating. We thank you so very much. This is adjourned.